You've been told that walking is enough, that staying a little active will keep your legs healthy. But here's the truth: most people over 60 never hear. Your legs can lose circulation even if you walk every single day. And when that happens, the consequences don't come slowly. They show up as swelling that won't go away, as heaviness that makes every step harder, as numbness that quietly steals your confidence. What if the real problem isn't that you're not moving, but that you're not activating the one muscle system that actually pushes blood back to your heart? The hidden truth about leg circulation. After 60, inside your lower legs is a powerful system most people never think about: your calf muscles. These muscles are not just for walking, they act as a pump, a critical engine that pushes blood upward against gravity. Every time they contract properly, they help return blood to your heart. But after 60, this system weakens, not because you're old, but because it's underused. Walking on flat surfaces with short steps doesn't fully activate this pump, so blood begins to pool. Pressure builds in your veins, and slowly, your legs begin to feel tired, swollen, and unstable. What most people over 60 are told about circulation is incomplete, and in many cases, misleading. The common belief is that aging itself is the main cause of poor circulation, that as the years pass, the body simply slows down, blood flow weakens, and there is very little you can do about it. That belief is not only inaccurate, it is dangerous because it leads to acceptance instead of action. The reality is far more precise. Circulation problems in older adults are rarely caused by age alone. They are driven by one dominant factor that is almost always overlooked: inactivity at the muscular level. Not just a lack of movement, but a lack of effective movement. There is a critical difference between being busy and being physically activated in the right way. Many individuals over 60 believe they are active enough. They walk around the house, they run errands, they stay generally mobile. Yet despite this, they still experience heavy legs, swelling around the ankles, and a constant feeling of fatigue in the lower body. This is where misunderstanding becomes a problem, because the issue is not whether you are moving, it is whether your muscles, especially in the lower legs, are being properly engaged. Circulation is not a passive process. It is not something the body maintains efficiently on its own without support. Your heart pumps blood downward with force, but returning that blood upward from your legs requires assistance. That assistance comes primarily from muscle contractions. When muscles contract, they compress veins and push blood back toward the heart. When they relax, the veins refill. This cycle is essential. Without it, blood begins to pool in the lower extremities. Pressure increases. Fluid accumulates. Tissues receive less oxygen. And slowly, symptoms begin to appear. This is why inactivity is so damaging. When muscles are not used effectively, this pumping mechanism weakens. It does not shut off suddenly. It declines gradually, and because the change is slow, many people fail to recognize what is happening. They assume the heaviness in their legs is normal, they ignore the swelling, they tolerate the stiffness until the condition becomes harder to reverse. Another critical point that is often missed is that not all inactivity looks the same. You can be on your feet for hours and still be functionally inactive. Standing in one place does not stimulate circulation effectively. Slow, minimal walking without proper muscle engagement does very little to activate the systems responsible for blood return. Even sitting for long periods, something very common in older adults, creates the perfect environment for circulation to decline. Blood settles, flow slows, and the body adapts to a lower level of efficiency. This is not a permanent state, but it becomes harder to correct the longer it is ignored. There is also a compounding effect. As circulation declines, muscles receive less oxygen and fewer nutrients. This leads to weakness, and weaker muscles are even less capable of supporting circulation. This creates a cycle. Reduced activity leads to poor circulation. Poor circulation leads to weaker muscles. Weaker muscles further reduce circulation. Left unaddressed, this cycle continues. What makes this particularly concerning is how quietly it develops. There is no sudden alarm, no sharp warning that forces immediate attention. Instead, it shows up subtly: a slight discomfort, a mild swelling, a gradual loss of endurance. These are often dismissed, but they are early indicators of a system that is no longer functioning efficiently. The key takeaway is clear: aging does not automatically lead to poor circulation. But inactivity, especially the kind that fails to engage the right muscles, almost always does. This distinction matters because one suggests inevitability. The other points directly to something that can be changed, and once you understand that, the focus shifts from accepting decline to correcting the real cause, which is not time, but underuse, and more importantly, misuse, of the very muscles designed to keep your blood moving efficiently throughout your life. Walking is often presented as the universal solution for maintaining health after 60. It is simple, accessible, widely recommended, and for general mobility, it holds value. But when it comes to restoring or improving leg circulation, relying on walking alone is a critical mistake. This is where many older adults are unintentionally misled. They believe that as long as they are walking regularly, their circulation should be improving, yet the symptoms tell a different story. Persistent swelling in the ankles, a feeling of heaviness that does not go away, fatigue in the legs even after light activity. These are not signs of progress. They are signs that something essential is being missed. The problem lies in how walking is typically performed. Short, slow steps on flat surfaces, minimal range of motion, very little engagement of the deeper muscle systems. This type of movement does not sufficiently activate the calf muscles, the very muscles responsible for pushing blood back toward the heart. Without strong and deliberate contractions in these muscles, the circulatory system in the lower body remains undersupported. The heart can pump blood downward effectively, but returning that blood upward requires mechanical assistance. Walking, in its most common form, does not provide enough of that assistance. It maintains basic movement, but it does not restore optimal function. There is also an adaptation effect that must be understood. The body adapts quickly to repeated patterns. If you walk the same way every day, at the same pace, with the same limited muscle engagement, your body becomes efficient at doing exactly that, and nothing more. Efficiency in this case becomes a limitation because the muscles are no longer challenged to contract fully, and without full contraction, the pumping mechanism required for healthy circulation remains weak. Another overlooked factor is stride length and push-off strength. Effective circulation support during walking depends on how well you push off the ground with your toes. This push-off phase is what activates the calf muscles deeply. However, many older adults develop shorter strides and softer steps over time. This reduces the intensity of muscle contraction, and with reduced contraction comes reduced blood flow support. Even posture plays a role. Walking with a slight forward lean, limited ankle movement, or reduced joint mobility further decreases the effectiveness of each step. So, while it appears that you are active, the internal systems responsible for circulation are not receiving the stimulation they require. There is also a misconception that more walking automatically leads to better results. This is not accurate. Increasing the duration of an ineffective movement pattern does not correct the underlying issue, it simply reinforces it. You can walk for 30 minutes, even an hour, and still fail to activate the specific muscles that drive circulation. This is why some individuals remain consistent with walking routines for years and still experience worsening symptoms in their legs. It is not a failure of effort, it is a failure of strategy. Walking should not be dismissed entirely, but it must be understood for what it is and what it is not. It is a foundational activity, not a targeted solution. For circulation to improve meaningfully, the muscles responsible for venous return must be activated with intention. They must contract fully, relax fully, and repeat this cycle under controlled conditions. This level of activation does not happen automatically during casual walking. It requires a more focused approach, one that isolates and strengthens the calf muscles directly. Without this, Walking remains a general activity that maintains movement, but does not correct dysfunction. The distinction is critical because many older adults believe they are doing everything right. They stay active, they keep walking, they follow common advice, yet they see little improvement. This leads to frustration and, in some cases, resignation. The truth is straightforward. Walking alone is not enough to restore proper leg circulation after 60. It lacks the intensity, the precision, and the targeted muscle engagement required to reverse the underlying problem. Understanding this is not discouraging, it is empowering, because it shifts the focus away from doing more and toward doing what actually works, which is where real change begins. There is a structure in your body that determines whether blood flows efficiently through your legs or begins to stagnate. Most people are never taught to recognize it. They focus on the heart. They think about arteries. They assume circulation is controlled entirely from the top down, but the truth is far more grounded. It sits in your lower legs, your calf muscles. These muscles are not simply for movement or balance. They serve a far more critical function. They act as a secondary pumping system, often referred to as the body's second heart. This is not a metaphor meant to sound impressive. It is a precise physiological reality. When your calf muscles contract, they compress the deep veins in your legs. This compression forces blood upward, back toward the heart. When the muscles relax, the veins refill with blood from the lower extremities. This creates a continuous cycle. Contract, push, relax, refill. Without this cycle, blood does not move efficiently against gravity. It begins to collect in the lower legs. Pressure increases within the veins. Fluid leaks into surrounding tissues. Swelling develops. Over time, this can lead to discomfort, visible vein changes, and a gradual decline in mobility. What makes this system so important is that the heart alone cannot complete the job. The heart can send blood downward with force, but returning that blood upward from the legs requires mechanical assistance. That assistance depends almost entirely on the strength and function of the calf muscles. After the age of 60, this system often begins to weaken, not suddenly but progressively, and the primary reason is not aging itself. It is reduced activation. Muscles that are not regularly challenged begin to lose strength and responsiveness. This includes the calf muscles. As they weaken, their ability to generate strong contractions declines, and with weaker contractions comes a weaker pumping effect. The result is a measurable reduction in circulatory efficiency. This is where many people misinterpret what they are experiencing. They notice swelling and assume it is a normal part of getting older. They feel heaviness and attribute it to fatigue. They experience stiffness and accept it as unavoidable. But these are not random symptoms. They are direct signals that the calf muscle pump is no longer functioning at an optimal level. There is also a structural component that cannot be ignored. Inside your veins are small one-way valves. Their role is to keep blood moving upward and prevent it from flowing backward. When the calf muscles contract effectively, these valves work in coordination with the pumping action. They open to allow upward flow. They close to prevent backflow. But when muscle contractions are weak or inconsistent, this system becomes less reliable. Blood can begin to move more slowly. In some cases, it may even pool in certain areas. This places additional stress on the vein walls and surrounding tissues. Another factor that accelerates this decline is prolonged sitting. When you sit for extended periods, your calf muscles remain inactive. There is little to no contraction, which means the pumping mechanism is essentially paused. Blood flow slows significantly, and over time, this contributes to reduced efficiency even when you eventually stand or walk. The body adapts to what it is repeatedly asked to do. If the calf muscles are rarely engaged fully, the body begins to operate at a lower baseline of circulation. This adaptation is not permanent, but it becomes more difficult to reverse as time passes. The key point is direct and unavoidable. If your calf muscles are weak, your circulation will be compromised. There is no alternative pathway that can fully compensate for this loss. No amount of passive movement, no reliance on the heart alone can replace the function of a strong and active calf muscle pump. This is why focusing on these muscles is not optional. It is essential, because they are not just supporting movement. They are sustaining one of the most critical processes in your body, the efficient return of blood to your heart. And when that process is supported properly, the difference is not subtle. It is immediate, it is noticeable, and it directly impacts how your legs feel, function, and respond throughout the day. There is a widespread assumption that improving circulation requires complex routines, specialized equipment, or intense physical effort. That assumption creates hesitation. It convinces many older adults that meaningful change is difficult, time-consuming, or even out of reach. But the reality is far more direct. Circulation in the lower body responds most effectively to one thing: targeted muscle activation performed with control and consistency, not variety, not complexity, not exhaustion, precision. And there is one movement that delivers this with unmatched efficiency. A single, focused action that directly engages the system responsible for returning blood from your legs back to your heart. The heel raise. At first glance, it appears almost too simple to matter. That is exactly why it is often ignored. People underestimate it, they rush through it, or they replace it with movements that look more demanding but fail to activate the right muscles. This is where the mistake happens, because effectiveness is not determined by how difficult an exercise looks. It is determined by how accurately it targets the function you are trying to restore. The heel raise does exactly that. When performed correctly, it isolates the calf muscles and forces them to contract fully. This contraction is not superficial, it is deep and deliberate. As the heels lift, the calf muscles shorten and tighten. This action compresses the veins embedded within the muscle tissue. The pressure created by this contraction pushes blood upward with force, not passively, actively. Then comes the second phase, which is equally important: the controlled lowering of the heels. This is not a collapse, it is a slow release. As the muscles lengthen, the pressure inside the veins decreases, allowing them to refill with blood from the lower parts of the legs. This creates a complete pumping cycle: contract to push, release to refill, repeated over and over with control. This cycle restores what has been missing: efficient circulation driven by muscular action. There is also a neurological component that strengthens this effect. When you perform a movement slowly and with intention, your brain increases its connection to the working muscles. This improves coordination, it enhances muscle recruitment, and it ensures that more muscle fibers are actively contributing to the contraction. Rushed movements do not provide this benefit. They reduce the effectiveness of each repetition, and they limit the overall impact on circulation. Another critical factor is range of motion. Most people perform this movement partially. They lift their heels just slightly, they avoid the top position, they drop quickly on the way down. This reduces the activation significantly. A full heel raise requires lifting as high as your strength allows, reaching the peak of contraction, holding briefly, and then lowering with complete control. This full range is what creates the strongest pumping effect. Without it, the benefit is diminished. Balance support is not a weakness, it is a strategy. Holding onto a chair or wall allows you to focus entirely on the movement. It removes instability and ensures that the calf muscles are doing the work rather than other parts of the body compensating. There is also a common tendency to prioritize repetition over quality. This is another mistake. 10 precise, controlled repetitions will have a greater impact than 30 rushed ones, because each correct repetition reinforces the pumping mechanism. Each incorrect one simply repeats inefficiency. Consistency is where transformation occurs, not occasional effort, not bursts of motivation. Daily execution, even in small amounts, because the circulatory system responds to regular stimulation. It adapts to what is repeated. Performing this movement once will create a temporary effect. Performing it daily begins to create a lasting change. Blood flow improves, pressure in the veins decreases, muscle strength gradually increases, and as strength increases, the pumping action becomes more powerful. This leads to a compounding benefit: Better circulation supports healthier muscle tissue. Healthier muscle tissue supports stronger contractions. Stronger contractions further improve circulation. A reinforcing cycle, the opposite of decline. What makes this approach so effective is its simplicity. There are no barriers to starting, no dependence on external conditions, no requirement for advanced ability. Only the willingness to perform one movement with precision and consistency, and in that simplicity lies its power, because when the right muscle is activated in the right way, the body responds exactly as it was designed to efficiently, reliably, and without unnecessary complexity. Most people believe that progress comes from intensity. They assume that if an exercise is not difficult, not exhausting, or not time-consuming, it cannot produce meaningful results. This belief is one of the most common reasons older adults fail to improve their circulation, because it shifts focus toward effort instead of effectiveness. And in the case of circulation, that approach does not work. The body does not require extreme strain to restore blood flow. It requires repetition, accurate, controlled, and consistent repetition. This is where the real transformation occurs, not in a single session, not in occasional bursts of motivation, but in what is done daily, without interruption. Consistency is not simply a recommendation. It is the mechanism through which the circulatory system adapts and improves. Every time you activate the calf muscles correctly, you initiate the pumping action that moves blood upward. This effect is immediate but temporary. Once the movement stops, the benefit begins to fade, blood flow slows again, pressure begins to rebuild, and the system returns to its previous state. This is why sporadic effort fails. Performing the right exercise once or twice a week does not provide enough stimulus for lasting change. It creates short-term relief, but not long-term improvement. The body requires repeated signals day after day to recognize that a new level of function is necessary. When this signal is consistent, adaptation begins. The muscles respond first. They become stronger, more responsive, more capable of producing full contractions. As this happens, the pumping action becomes more effective. More blood is pushed upward with each repetition. Less blood remains pooled in the lower legs. This reduces pressure within the veins, which directly impacts swelling and discomfort. At the same time, the vascular system begins to adjust. Blood vessels become more efficient at handling flow. Circulation improves not just during movement, but throughout the day. This is how small, repeated actions create a system-wide effect. There is also a protective benefit to consistency. When circulation improves, tissues receive more oxygen and nutrients. This supports muscle health, skin integrity, and overall leg function. It reduces the risk of complications that often develop when circulation is poor and prolonged. But none of this happens without regular input. The body does not maintain improvements that are not reinforced. If the activity stops, the system gradually returns to its previous condition. This is not failure. It is normal physiology. The body adapts to what it is asked to do consistently, and it reverses when that demand is removed. This is why intensity is not the priority. High effort performed inconsistently creates fluctuation. Low to moderate effort performed daily creates stability and progress. There is also a psychological advantage to this approach. Simple, manageable routines are easier to maintain. They do not rely on motivation alone. They become part of a daily pattern, and once a behavior becomes consistent, it requires less effort to continue. This removes one of the biggest barriers to long-term success, the belief that improvement must be difficult. In reality, improvement must be repeatable. That is the standard that matters. A short, focused session performed every day will always outperform a longer, irregular one, because the circulatory system responds to frequency, not occasional intensity. This principle is not optional, it is fundamental. Without consistency, there is no sustained improvement in circulation. With consistency, even the simplest movement becomes powerful. It reinforces the pumping mechanism, strengthens the muscles involved, and gradually restores efficiency to a system that has been underperforming. The outcome is not immediate transformation, it is steady correction, a return to proper function through repeated, deliberate action. And once this process is in place, the body begins to work with you instead of against you. Circulation improves, symptoms decrease, and confidence in movement returns. All from one principle applied correctly. Do it regularly, do it with control, and allow the body to respond the way it was designed to over time.